Hey juniors! Today we're going to talk about the French and Indian War. Super excited, you guys are going to love it. So let's go right in. Our essential question for the day is, what are the key events in the French and Indian War? So this essential question does need to be copied at the top of your notes page. So pause the video and copy that down. Alright, the first thing we need to know before we get into the French and Indian War specifically is that Britain has a long history of fighting with France. A very, very long history. Now, remember yesterday, we said that France controlled the Ohio River Valley region as well as parts of Canada. Britain, of course, was still secluded in the 13 colonies, which was separated from French territory by the Appalachian Mountains, which is this black line right here. However, French territory was a very valuable fur trading area. There were lots of animals that were killed, skinned, and their furs were sold back to Europe, and France was making tons of money off the fur trade. Naturally, Britain wanted a piece of that wealth from the fur trade. So settlers began to move past the Appalachian Mountains into French territory. France was pretty afraid that they would lose money if the colonists were able to trade fur as well, so naturally they were not too happy about the British intruders. So I want you to go ahead and take a moment and get some of these notes down. So, what's super important from this slide is that France controlled the Ohio River region, and that they were engaged in the fur trade, and that British settlers began to move past the Appalachian Mountains into French territory. So pause the video and copy that down. Naturally, France was not happy that the British were moving into their territory. So, very quickly, war breaks out. In 1753, British military moves into the Ohio River region to take it over. As the conflict continued, George Washington took one branch of the British military and moved in specifically into the Ohio River region. Once he was across the Appalachian Mountains, he was immediately met by the French military and defeated after a long battle at a small fort called Fort Necessity. Pause the video and copy these two bullet points down. George Washington, which is this guy, would eventually become our first president of the United States. However, in this war, the French and Indian War, he fought for the British. His defeat at Fort Necessity was the beginning of the French and Indian War. And Britain fought against France with the help of the Native Americans. So pause the video and go ahead and copy this bullet point into your notes. Alright. As the war raged on, the colonists looked for a way to unite themselves and to get more support from other Native American tribes. They believed that in doing this would speed up the war and guarantee that the British would beat the French. The solution was the Albany Plan. The Albany Plan was created by Ben Franklin, which is this guy in the photo, and it proposed that the colonies be united under one central government. The government would consist of one main general and a council of delegates from each of the 13 colonies. It also proposed that the Iroquois Native American tribe be brought into the war. This would ensure more soldiers and a likely victory for the British if they could outnumber the French. However, this plan never became a reality, and the Iroquois remained neutral throughout the war. So the two bullet points that you need to copy down from this slide is this one and this one about the Iroquois. Pause the video if you need to. Alright, In every war, there's always a turning point, which starts to decide which side is actually going to win. So, in the French and Indian War, the turning point was in 1759, when the English military captured Quebec, which is right here. And that's a major city in French Canada. However, the war still dragged on for 4 more years. So, what's important here is that in 1759, the English military captured Quebec. Pause the video and copy that down into your notes in Cornell format. Alright, eventually Britain and France got tired of fighting each other. So in 1753, they signed the Treaty of Paris, which officially ended the French and Indian War. Pause the video and copy this first bullet point down into your notes. The Treaty of Paris gave Canada to the British. And then the British also gained all French lands that were east of the Mississippi. So all this green area here, which was previously owned by France, now is owned by the English. The only exception is that the city of New Orleans was not given to the English. One thing that I didn't mention earlier was that Spain actually fought with France for 1 year in 1762. To thank Spain for their help, France gave them the entire Louisiana Territory, which extended from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. Specifically, though, the city of New Orleans was what Spain got. All of these bullet points do need to be in your notes. So pause the video if you need to and copy those down. Alright, as a result of the war, England had tons of new territory that was ready to be settled as a result of the Treaty of Paris. Now, naturally, the colonists who had been cooped up on the East Coast for so long wanted to settle in the new land. However, Britain was worried that the colonists who settled in the Ohio River Valley region would come into conflict with the Native Americans that already lived there. So in order to avoid another expensive war, the British enforced what is known as the Proclamation of 1763. And it basically what it did was it enforced the idea that colonists could not move past the Appalachian Mountains. They had to stay in the colonies. So if you were a settler that was already in Indian territory, you had to move back to the colonies. And the Appalachian Mountains served now as a legal boundary. For this slide, Proclamation of 1763, this bullet point right here needs to be copied into your notes. Alright guys, that's the end of I&M for today. Thanks for listening. It's time to practice!